So continuing the conversation with Dr. Chris Martinson of the YouTube channel Peak Prosperity, there's so much to get into and so little time, but in this video we will be discussing individual actions that you could take to help yourself, the second wave, testing shortfalls, antibody protests, long-term effects, and I could keep going on and on and on, but for the sake of time, just starting off right now. Now, if we really think about it, there's of course a lot of things that could have been done a lot better. A lot of this could have been prevented. What do you see things evolving from here? A lot of people are talking about the second wave. I think there's a lot of consideration to take in with some of these protests being blamed for that. I've been talking about that for a very long time. I think that this is going to be really a fascinating situation that's going to be unfolding soon. How do you see this second wave unfolding from here?
Well, I got to be completely honest. I see a lot of these protests, and they're just completely filled with knuckleheads, and I wouldn't want to live around them. So here's how I would run a protest. If I wanted to petition my government and say the governor and say, look, we don't like you telling us what to do. We want to make our own decisions, and we'll show you that we can be trusted with this. Well, then have everybody stand 6 feet apart with a mask on, and your protest will be really effective. And I would join that particular protest. But the idea that I don't want the government telling me what to do, and I'm going to stand there and I demand the right to not only get infected, but potentially infect others, that's not where I fall in this whole thing. And you preface this very well, Luke, because we don't know what this thing does yet. So I'm a pathologist by training. My PhD is from Duke University, studied pathology. I can tell you that this particular virus, because it not only binds to the ACE2 receptor and gets into a whole bunch of tissues, right? It gets into, we've heard about the lungs, but it gets into the heart, it gets into the kidneys, it gets into the testes, right? We don't even know if this thing leads to long-term sterility in males yet at this point. We're going to have to figure that out in about a year, right? We don't know any of that stuff. We think it gets into neural tissue and all kinds of things. So we don't know that. And we don't know what happens if in a year people had this and their antibodies get low and then they get a second infection. Is that going to be worse? Because that's called antibody-dependent enhancement. It's a known pathway for SARS. This is a slightly different virus, which is SARS-CoV-2. But we don't know how bad this thing is going to be. So I don't want it, right? I just don't want it. So I want to avoid that. So I think it's my right as a citizen not to be around knuckleheads who think it's their right to pass this disease to whoever they want to. That's where I draw the line. I'm a small L libertarian in this story, plus a lot of other sort of, grab bag political sort of beliefs. But I'm really serious about this. I don't want this virus. There are people who've had it who now we think have long-term, possibly permanent lung damage, like for the rest of their lives. There's people who come out of this with long-term, permanent kidney damage. I don't want any of that, right? And the way I avoid that is by not getting it in the first place or getting it a very light case of it. And the way I do that is I'm both wearing a mask and I'm taking the kinds of supplements that we know about, vitamin D, vitamin C, elderberry, and other things like that, zinc, selenium. If you're taking these basic things, the terrain of your body, your immune system is jacked up and in its best condition to fight viruses. And that's something we do terribly in this country. Like, oh, you need your flu vaccine. We're going to fight the virus. We'll give you a vaccine. That's how we fight this thing. And there's like zero effort spent on, oh, by the way, the most effective way to fight a virus is for your body to fight it. Because even if we give you a vaccine, it was your body that got rid of it at the end of it all anyway. So maybe we should have your body in the best condition it can be. Here's what we know. We spend no time on that stuff, but we have got this really monstrous sick care system in this country. So I can't get behind the protesters who say our right includes standing really close together, getting each other sick. I don't have it in me to join that movement.
Yeah, particularly when I talked about the protest, I talked about maybe it would be more logical to have courtesy and respect for other individuals. Maybe it's better just to go back to work if you really want to go back to work, but again, still being extremely cautious and extremely respectful of other people's space. And I think that would be more of a logical kind of approach than kind of asking government for permission. I would have to say the government overreach has been extensive, and I think it also does deserve to be addressed, but addressed in a proper intellectual way, because I do believe there will be blowback, and a lot of it will be centered against individuals individuals who want freedom, and I don't want that to happen because it will give government more of an excuse to come in there and then take away more people's rights. We don't want that. We don't need that. We need rational responsibility and actions that lead to a better situation. And having courtesy and respect for other individuals in their space is one important way to do that. But there also is a lot of different data, a lot of people talking about, of course, this second wave, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of things that are not known here. There's now nearly 400 Russian cadets that said that they tested positive. There's a theory out there that more people are infected than we actually know about. And I wanted to bring this question to you. If that's the truth, if more people have this than not, what are the bigger ramifications? Is this over according to some people? I don't think it is personally myself, but what are the bigger ramifications if already enough people have this? Governor Cuomo of New York recently coming out and saying that 66% of new coronavirus patients were individuals who stayed at home. So what do you make of some of the preliminary data showing that a lot more people have this than previously believed?
Unfortunately, this data is still a mess right now, and I wish we had it. It would be great if we had that data. Data is the underbelly of this whole story, and it's the United States did a terrible job. There's two kinds of testing we need to know about. First is the PCR test. That's testing for an active infection, right? So that's a polymerase chain reaction. It's looking for the RNA of the virus. You only have that in you if you have an active infection, you've got virus particles in you or the remnants of that. So there's a little window. And then after you've had the infection, if you've mounted a humoral response, antibody response in your body, you then have antibodies circulating in you, which hopefully confer lifetime immunity to that virus. That would be great. What we also don't know about is how many people have actually had this at this point in time, because first, our testing for active infections is really defective. Even in New York right now, which is kind of leading the nation in this, you go to their website and they say, hey, if you think you have coronavirus, don't even come in to get tested unless you're really bad. In fact, don't come to the hospital at all unless you really, really think you need to. And we're not going to test you unless you are really awful. So we know for a fact that there are many more people who've had this than have been tested. So the test is the bare minimum number. It's some number more than that. Is it twice as many? Is it 100 times as many? We don't actually know. So that's where the second stage of testing comes in, which is the antibody test. Now, the problem with these, and it gets all technical very quickly, you'd love it if these things were 100% accurate. 100% of the time, if you take the test, it'll tell you definitively, yes, you've had it, or no, you haven't. The problem with that is, first, not everybody develops the antibodies to this thing. So, oops, we might miss them. They might have already had it. Does that count? We don't know. Second, the tests aren't 100% accurate. They're actually way less than that. And that's a problem because you get both false positives and false negatives. And those really start to glue up the numbers. And those tests are actually really good if everybody's had it. If you have a really high prevalence of this in the population, the incidence level super high, then the tests are pretty accurate. But if very few people have had it, the math gets kind of funky. But what happens is they give wildly inaccurate readings all the time. We've had a bunch of these early tests that came out were done poorly, including the one in New York, the original one, the one in Stanford, the one in Germany. Super big what we call sample bias, which even if the test was perfectly accurate, you can still mess it up. Let's imagine that I'm only going to sample people who come to the hospital. Obviously, that's a biased sample. What you really want is you want to take a perfect cross-section of this population and test them randomly, and then you'll get a pretty good readout. They didn't do that in any of these cases yet. So we don't know. My personal guess at this point is roughly take the number of actual positive tests that we have on record and multiply it by either 10, possibly as much as 20. But I'm leaning kind of somewhere in between those two at this point. That's my best guess.
And it's important to note here, if some people aren't getting antibodies to this totally puts in question vaccines. And again, vaccines here have a lot of questions surrounding them, and we don't hear anyone talking about them. And if you dare talk about this, you face a lot of pushback and censorship by, of course, the establishment and, of course, YouTube, which you've been dealing with. We've been dealing with here for a very long time. We had our channel fully demonetized a couple days ago because of, quote, harmful content. If you go back and see our coverage from January, we've been telling people to take this seriously. We've been telling people to get prepared. I've seen some of your videos, Chris. You've been doing the same thing. Your calls have been very accurate. And how is YouTube treating you? Because I see similar things that happen to you that also happen to me.
Well, they haven't fully deplatformed us yet. We got demonetized right out of the gate, 100%. And as well, we saw our subscribers count skyrocket and then just flatline, and now it's wobbling, and people email us all the time and get us through Twitter and stuff and leave comments under our YouTube channel that say they're getting unsubscribed and they don't know why that's happening. But it happens all the time. So I remind people on every podcast now that goes out across the video channel there on YouTube, I say, remember to resubscribe, and people are like, oh my gosh, really? And so it's kind of like running through a thicket. I kind of feel like YouTube is hostile to our messaging because they're unsubscribing people. They're not actively promoting the channel. It's demonetized. So obviously we're not feeling all that helpful. And I think our seminal crime is I've been very harsh on the WHO, and I've been calling them out for being what they are, as really reprehensible, not following their own guidelines. I pulled their own pandemic guidelines on January 23rd, looked at them, and on the 24th I said, we're at phase 4, and phase 5 is a full-blown pandemic. We reached that within a week, and it was over a month and a half later that the WHO finally declared a pandemic. And now we know, thanks to the German BND, that President Xi had called on Tedros and said, hey, please don't mention human-to-human transmission to anybody because that's a little awkward for us. And so the WHO didn't even do that. So we lost 4 to 6 weeks of absolutely critical time to get prepared for this thing because of the WHO's leadership. And I was calling them out on that. And the whole time I'm doing that, all YouTube could think to do is put the little, to get the best information, click the WHO thing down here. They were promoting the WHO the whole time. I was saying, these guys are a bunch of scumbags and they're doing awful stuff. And maybe not the whole WHO is doing that, but the leadership was awful. And I dared say that, but that was our crime, I think, Luke, is you're not allowed to think for yourself, inform your own opinion. I wasn't delivering a state-approved opinion, which is what WHO at the WHO and YouTube seem to want.
If you look at what the WHO is saying, they were wrong more than they were right. They were telling people not to wear masks. They were telling people no human-to-human transition. And then we have an announcement that YouTube, Google, Facebook, even Amazon is going to be working with the WHO to fight disinformation, to fight crazy conspiracy theories. There's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of bad information out there, but I think as adults, as responsible human beings, we could hear different ideas and then have discernment. This kind of idea that someone could decide what you can and cannot put into your ears is absolutely insane, absolutely crazy. And I think it definitely needs to be resisted. We definitely need to stick together more than ever. That's why I'm very happy you kind of joined on this program, because there's very few people that have these kind of 3 things in common. They're taking the situation with the sickness seriously. They're taking the economic situation seriously as well. And they're also taking our civil liberties seriously as well, which are very, very important. I think I saw one of your videos and you talked about a 3 kind of prog kind of approach to all of this. One of them was keeping the economy open. Another one was keeping cases low. And I think a third one was making sure hospitals are not overrun. Would it be fair? Would you agree to maybe add maybe a 4th one when it comes to protecting your liberties and your freedom? Is that something that also concerns you as much as all the other stuff?
Oh, it absolutely concerns me. And this sort of falls under the James Carville "never let a good crisis go to waste" quote, right? Because I don't fall. There's people out there, I get berated with this a lot. People like, Chris, you don't understand. This is just a plot for world domination control. And I'm like, it actually can be both. It could be this virus came out. My personal belief is this virus came out of a lab. I'd like to believe it was an accidental release, but either way, it's still unfortunate that we're doing this kind of gain of function weaponizing research on these types of viruses, right? And so it can be both true that this is a bad virus, and certain actors are using this as an opportunity to enhance and expand their power and control.
People need to understand gain of functions means research to improve the ability to cause disease. Many people don't understand that. Many people have it completely backwards because the mainstream media is running around saying, oh my goodness, they're cutting funding to all these scientists. They're cutting funding to all these labs. These are horrible. We need these labs. These labs are the equivalent of a sociopath walking around with a meat cleaver with blood on it, and then everyone's saying, why are there so many bloody people? Why are scientists working on creating and weaponizing biology to the most lethal extent that they can? This is something that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, I wish that was the conversation. I wish we could logically talk about that, but no. You're going to get the hammer from YouTube just like you are, just like we are. And Chris, I thank you so much for coming on. I thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? And do you have any last parting words about what to do? What should be the right approach? How do we move forward from here?
Well, sure. And thanks for the opportunity, Luke. I appreciate it. And it's great talking to all of your listeners, because I think it seems like we're very much aligned, and my tribe and your tribe are probably have a big Venn diagram overlap, I'm sure, because we're curious and we like, here's my motto: when the data changes, I'll change my opinion. Right. So I'm a free thinker. I gather all the data. I don't care what other people think about it, and until I'll form my own opinions. So I love that free thinking tribe. We conduct most of our business over at peakprosperity.com. And most of our information's on the free side. We have a subscription newsletter as well for people who like to go a little deeper, be part of the deeper tribe around that. At chrismartenson.com, you can spell all that out, chrismartenson.com. That's our channel at YouTube. And we've got, well over 100 videos on Corona. I've been doing almost one a day, taking the weekends off now. And then at Twitter, it's at Chris Martenson, and you can follow me there. So those are the three big places I'm putting all this stuff out. Final parting words on this are nothing's ever going to be the same again. So this whole idea that if we open back up again, things can go back to how they were, it's not going to happen. We had a credit-based, debt, fiat-based money system that was predicated on constantly expanding debt. It was a bad idea. COVID just put some accelerant on that and burnt it all down. So that world isn't coming back. A lot of jobs aren't coming back. The economic impacts of this, I think, are going to actually dwarf, from a misery standpoint, the virus itself. But there's no way to unring this bell. So my parting advice for people is let go of the past as quickly as you can. Skate to where the puck is going to be. There's a whole new future coming, whole different sets of opportunities. But to the extent you're clinging to a job that is never coming back is the extent to which you're wasting time on this. It's just the most serious message I can give people, that the world has changed.
Yeah, and it's definitely extraordinary times, and it's more important than ever to be awake, to be informed, and to be responsible for yourself. If you believe that, share this video with your friends and family members, because YouTube definitely won't. They used to long time ago, but they definitely won't now. And because you guys are here every single day, a part of the conversation, a part of the dialogue, I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. We can only be better together by learning and communicating in an honest format. This is why we're here. This is why we have the comment section. And this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.